You know what no one tells you? That being alone is the most dangerous power a woman can have. Because when she's alone, truly alone, not texting, not scrolling, not needing validation, she remembers who she is. And when a woman remembers who she is, the world gets scared. Because society loves distracted women, dependent women, waiting women. But a woman who sits with her thoughts, dances to her silence, falls in love with her solitude, she becomes unstoppable. No man can manipulate her, no friend can betray her, no storm can betray her. Because she has mastered the rarest of arts, the art of not needing anyone to complete her. You see, queens are not made in crowds. Queens are built in silence, in solitude, when no one's watching. That's when the real crown is forged. Let them call you too quiet, too alone, too private. Smile, because the girl who needs no audience is the one everyone secretly fears. When you love your own company, you become the prize. You don't chase, you attract. You don't beg, you walk away. You don't settle, you rise. So today, remember this: your solitude is not your weakness, it is your superpower. And the moment you embrace it, the universe starts working for you, not against you. Stay alone long enough and you will meet the real you. And once you meet her, you will never settle for less again. Not in love, not in life, not in dreams. Because the woman who is comfortable being alone is the woman who owns the world. When you are alone, truly alone, something rare happens inside you. You become emotionally invincible. Because aloneness teaches you what no relationship, no friendship, no crowd can ever teach you: that you are enough. Imagine this: a woman sitting in her room at midnight, no text buzzing, no calls flashing, no friend asking, "Are you okay?" Just her breath, just her mind, just her heartbeat. And for the first time, she realizes she's not lonely. She's free. She's complete. She doesn't need anyone clapping for her to feel worthy. She doesn't need anyone to hold her to feel safe. She doesn't need to explain her silence. And this, my friend, is the first step towards becoming emotionally bulletproof. Think of that girl who used to panic every time he didn't reply, who stayed awake worrying why her friends didn't invite her, who felt empty if no one liked her post. She's no longer that girl, because aloneness made her fierce. She turned off the phone, sat with her fears, and realized they weren't as scary as she thought. She made coffee for one, watched movies alone, traveled alone, laughed in restaurants alone. And guess what happened? The fear died, the neediness died. Now if someone ghosts her, she smiles, because she knows it's not rejection, it's redirection. She says she could never be a mother than a single mother, because she thought it's not rejection, it's redirection. She deserves better, and she's willing to wait. When you stand alone in your decisions, you stop craving other people's permission. The woman who opens her own business while her family doubts her, the man who writes poetry while his friends mock him, the young girl who chooses a different career because her soul whispers it's right, they are emotionally untouchable. Because they've learned to hear their own voice louder than the noise of the world. It hurts at first, of course it does. The silence screams. The emptiness feels like punishment. But slowly, beautifully, it transforms into power. It becomes the solid ground under your feet. And then no one, not a lover, not a boss, not even society, can push you off balance. I remember a woman who loved to dance, but her partner left her. Heartbroken, she thought she'd never dance again. But one day she danced, alone, in her living room. No audience, no applause, just her, her spirit, and the music. And in that moment she realized the joy was never in the approval of others. It was in her own body, her own soul, her own freedom. She didn't need anyone to make her feel alive. And that night she cried, not because she was sad, but because she was finally free. That's the gift of aloneness. You stop performing. You start living. Look at the people who can sit in cafes alone without fidgeting, who can enjoy a solo trip, who can spend weekends by themselves and feel peace instead of panic. They are the strongest. Because they know the truth. Your emotional peace cannot depend on another human being. Lovers may leave, friends may betray, family may misunderstand, but your relationship with yourself stays. And when that relationship is strong, you are unbreakable. A friend once told me how she stopped fearing loneliness after her breakup. For months, she thought she'd die without him. But slowly, she built her life. She cooked for herself. She worked out for herself. She watched sunsets by herself. And then, one evening, standing on her balcony alone, she laughed. Because she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Happiness, without condition. No ring, no promise, no forever. Just herself. Complete. That's what emotional invincibility looks like. Even in work, this power shows itself. The employee who dares to quit a toxic job without a backup plan because her soul can't bear the suffocation is stronger than the one who stays out of fear. The artist who creates without followers, the writer who writes without readers, the dreamer who dreams without applause, they are dangerous because their fire comes from within. They are not slaves to validation, they are free. And the world bows sooner or later to such freedom. Every time you choose to spend an evening alone, rather than chasing company that drains you, you win. Every time you walk away from fake friends instead of staying for convenience, you win. Every time you listen to your own heart over society's noise, you win. Because you are telling life, I am enough, I am whole, I am unshaken. And that makes you emotionally invincible. In solitude, your true identity is born. Not in noise, not in company, not in the constant validation of others. Have you ever noticed how the moment you are left alone, without distractions, your mind starts to speak the truth? When no one is around, no expectations to fulfill, no image to maintain, that is when the real you finally shows up. Most people fear this moment. They run from it. They fill their time with social media, parties, endless texts, calls, conversations. Why? Because silence feels threatening. Because solitude confronts you with yourself. But only in that silence can you meet the purest, most powerful version of who you truly are. Think of that girl who spent years chasing friendships just to feel accepted. She said yes when she meant no. She laughed at jokes she hated. She went to places that made her uncomfortable. But one weekend, when everyone was busy and no one called, she sat at home, alone. At first it felt strange, lonely even, but then something magical happened. She opened the book she loved as a child. She listened to the old songs that once gave her goosebumps. She remembered the dreams she buried to please the world. That weekend, in quiet solitude, she found herself again, the real her. Not the version designed for approval, but the original soul who once wanted to write, to dance, to dream, and that changed everything. She stopped faking smiles. She stopped following crowds. In solitude, she was reborn. Or think of the man who always depended on relationships to feel valuable. The moment he was single, he felt incomplete, lost. So he jumped from partner to partner, always needing someone to tell him he mattered. But then life gave him no choice. Months of being alone after a painful breakup. He hated it at first. The empty bed, the silent evenings, the quiet mornings with only his own thoughts. But slowly, things shifted. He started jogging in the park alone. He cooked dinner for one and enjoyed every bite. He looked in the mirror and said, "You are enough." And for the first time in years, he smiled, not because someone loved him, but because he finally loved himself. Alone, he met the man he forgot he was. Even in work life, solitude reveals true identity. There's the young woman who worked in an office where everyone told her what to do, how to dress, what to say, how to think. She obeyed. Until one day she quit, tired of being someone else. At home, jobless and alone, she faced terror, the fear of being directionless. But in that scary space of solitude, her childhood passion whispered again, art. She picked up the brush, painted like she used to, and felt alive. Today, she sells her paintings worldwide. Had she stayed in the noise of that office, she would have died with her dreams locked away. Solitude freed her true self. Even mothers forever surrounded by family sometimes get their moment of solitude. A mother I knew raised kids, served a husband, ran a household, and forgot herself completely. But when her children grew up and left home, she faced the silence. It crushed her at first. Who was she if not a mother? But then she picked up her old diary, began to write again, remembered the writer she once wanted to become. Now she blogs, speaks, teaches, because solitude gave her back her forgotten self. Even in simple moments, solitude shows you truth. A man sits alone in a coffee shop, no phone, no friend, no book, just coffee and quiet. And he thinks, am I happy with my life? Am I where I want to be? The answers scare him, but they also wake him up. He changes jobs, fixes his health, reconnects with real dreams, all because he dared to sit alone. Solitude strips away the masks. You stop being the perfect friend, the perfect partner, the perfect employee. You become human again. Imperfect. Real. Alive. When you sit alone at night, staring at the ceiling, you face your fears, your regrets, your lost desires. But you also discover your hidden courage, your unspoken dreams, your forgotten magic. No crowd, no noise can give you that. Only solitude can. When you embrace the power of being alone, you no longer settle for less. In love, in work, in life. You start realizing that your worth is not measured by the number of people around you or the attention you receive. It is measured by how deeply you respect yourself. Look at the woman who spent years begging for love that was barely given to her. She stayed in a relationship where the messages were rare, the calls were short, and the affection was forced. Every time she wanted to speak her heart, she swallowed her words just to keep him. But the day she chose to be alone, to walk away without fear of loneliness, she broke free from the prison of almost love. She stopped answering half-hearted texts. She stopped waiting for weekend plans that never happened. She chose peace over pieces. And guess what happened? She realized that being single was far more beautiful than being almost loved. The silence of her room felt safer than the noise of his lies. This is what happens when you no longer settle for less in love. In your career, this shift is life-changing. Think about the young man who worked in an office where his talent was ignored. Every time he brought a creative idea, they dismissed him. Every time he asked for a raise, they told him to wait for the right time. He felt trapped, afraid to leave because he thought no better opportunity would come. But one morning, he stood in front of the mirror and said, "I'd rather be broke and free than rich and disrespected." He resigned. It was terrifying. But in that space of nothingness, he found something precious. His passion for graphic design. He started freelancing, built his portfolio, attracted clients who valued his creativity. Today he earns double what he made at that old job and wakes up every morning with joy. The courage to stand alone made him rise higher than the fear of falling. Even in friendships, you stop tolerating disrespect. There was a girl who always said yes, Yes to the friend who borrowed money and never returned it. Yes to the friend who gossiped behind her back. Yes to the friend who only called when she needed something. She was afraid to be friendless, afraid to be left out, until one day she chose solitude over fake company. She unfollowed, she blocked, she stayed home on weekends with her books and music rather than suffer the shallow laughter of those who drained her. Months passed, and then new friends appeared. Genuine souls who valued her truth, her boundaries, her joy. She never settled for less in friendship again. Think about health and self-care. There's a woman who always said yes to every social event, midnight parties, junk food nights, endless drinking, because she didn't want to be boring or alone at home, but her body suffered. Sleepless nights, weight gain, anxiety. One evening, exhausted, she cancelled every plan, turned off her phone, and made dinner for one. She lit candles, put on soft music, and ate slowly. She rested, she breathed, she said no to the world and yes to herself. And in that moment, she promised never to trade her well-being for social approval again. Now, she works out, eats clean, sleeps early, not because of trends, but because she refuses to settle for a life where her health is ignored. In dreams too, you stop compromising. There was a boy who dreamed of becoming an author, but his family told him to be practical, to take a banking job, to forget writing. For years he obeyed, wearing suits that suffocated him, signing papers that meant nothing to his soul. But one lonely night, staring at the ceiling, he whispered, "I can't die with this story still inside me." The next day, he started writing after work. He published an e-book. Sales were slow, but he kept going. Today, he is a best-selling author because he refused to settle for less than his dream. Even in self-respect, the change is real. There was a girl who always explained herself, why she said no, why she didn't reply, why she made certain choices, because she feared judgment. But after choosing solitude, she realized she owed no explanations for living life her way. She stopped justifying. She stopped apologizing. Her silence carried more power than any excuse or explanation. She refused to settle for a life ruled by other people's opinions. Alone time is a secret doorway to creativity and bold vision that most people ignore because they fear silence. But in truth, silence is not empty. It is full of answers. Take the example of a young girl who worked at a marketing firm surrounded by noise, deadlines, meetings, and constant demands. Every moment of her day was filled with someone else's opinion, her boss, her colleagues, the clients. She was always busy but strangely uninspired. Then one weekend, she escaped to the countryside alone. No phone, no laptop, no emails. Just her, a notebook, and the quiet whisper of the wind. And suddenly ideas poured into her mind like a waterfall. She thought of a new campaign no one else had ever imagined. Something bold and breathtaking. When she returned, her concept won the company its biggest client ever. That breakthrough didn't come in a boardroom, it was born in solitude. Consider the artist who struggled to paint for years because his studio was always filled with people, friends, family, distractions. His canvas stayed blank, and so did his heart. But one day, frustrated, he locked the door, turned off his phone, and sat quietly staring at the white canvas. The silence made him uncomfortable at first, but slowly his mind drifted back to his childhood memories, to the colors of festivals, the faces of strangers on the street, the sky at sunset. Brush in hand, he painted for hours without stopping. When he stepped back, he realized he had created the best piece of his life. Alone time had woken up the artist sleeping inside him. There's also the story of a chef who worked in a busy restaurant kitchen. Orders screamed from every side, clattering dishes, shouting voices. It was chaos. She followed recipes without passion, cooking what the menu demanded, not what her soul desired. But during the lockdown, when everything stopped, she stayed home, alone in her kitchen. For the first time in years, she cooked for herself. Slowly, with joy, she invented dishes, mixed impossible flavors, created magic on the plate. Those recipes became the heart of the new restaurant she opened later, a restaurant that won awards for its originality. Her creativity was not born in noise, it bloomed in silence. Even writers know this truth. There was a man who dreamed of writing a novel, but never found the time. Life was a blur of responsibilities, work, friends, social events. Every night he promised to write, but exhaustion claimed him. Finally, he took a month off and went to a cabin in the forest. Alone with the trees, the rain, and the sound of birds, he wrote the first 3 chapters of a story that publishers later fought over. Those words, that world, those characters, they all came to life because he dared to be alone. Entrepreneurs too awaken vision in solitude. There was a woman who ran a small business but felt stuck, unable to see how to grow. She took a silent retreat for 3 days. No phone, no speaking, just thinking. In that uncomfortable space, her mind opened. She saw the gaps in her business plan, the new product her customers secretly needed, the bold risks she had been too scared to take. She returned home and changed everything. Within a year, her sales tripled. That clarity, that vision, was born not in endless meetings or noisy brainstorming, but in the quiet of her own mind. And even in personal life, alone time plants seeds of bold dreams. A man stuck in a dead-end job spent years complaining to friends, but nothing changed. One weekend, tired of advice and opinions, he switched off his phone and sat with himself. For hours, he thought about his childhood dream of becoming a photographer. In that lonely moment, courage stirred. He bought a camera the next day, started capturing the world through his eyes, posted his work online. Today, he travels the world as a paid photographer. The vision for this life-changing leap didn't come from friends or family or mentors. It came from being alone. When you master the art of being alone, something extraordinary shifts in the way people see you. You no longer attract pity, you attract respect. People stop seeing you as someone to be rescued or fixed. They see strength in your solitude, confidence in your silence, and power in your independence. Take the example of a young woman who used to cry after every breakup, running to friends asking, "What's wrong with me? Why can't I be loved?" Her friends felt pity. They gave her advice that didn't work. But one day she stopped. She decided to embrace being single, not as a punishment, but as her greatest power. She began traveling alone, going to dinner by herself, enjoying her own company. And slowly, the pity in people's eyes turned into awe. Friends began asking, "How do you do this? How are you so confident?" She smiled because she knew being alone made her whole. She no longer begged for love, she chose it, and the world noticed. Consider the man who worked in an office where everyone knew he was miserable. He stayed late, said yes to everything, carried other people's burdens, hoping they'd see his worth. But all they gave him was sympathy and empty praise. Then something changed. He began to say no. He left work on time. He took quiet lunch breaks in the park alone. People whispered at first, "Is he giving up?" But as days turned into weeks, they saw a new fire in him. His work improved, his energy changed. He no longer ran after approval, he walked in certainty. Soon those same colleagues asked for his opinion, respected his time, feared wasting his energy. Pity had transformed into admiration because he respected himself enough to stand alone. Even in friendships, this truth reveals itself. There was a woman in every friend circle who was the yes person, the one who was always available, always there to pick up the pieces of others' broken lives, but whose own life was quietly falling apart. Friends loved her dependability, but never truly respected her boundaries. Until she changed. One birthday, she chose to spend the day alone at a beach instead of throwing the usual party. She turned off her phone, read her favorite book, watched the sunset by herself. When she returned, everyone wanted to know why. Because I deserve peace, she said. And suddenly, they treated her differently. Not as the go-to fixer, but as someone who knew her worth. Someone not afraid to choose herself. She no longer attracted pity. She radiated quiet authority. Even in relationships, this principle stands firm. There was a man who clung to toxic love, chasing someone who never valued him. His friends pitied him. They shook their heads and whispered, "He deserves better, but he won't leave." But one day he did. He packed his things, said goodbye without tears, and walked away without looking back. He chose solitude over suffering. And the same friends who pitied him before now respected him. That took courage, they said, because the world does not respect those who stay where they are unloved. The world respects the ones brave enough to walk alone. Think about the mother who sacrificed everything for her family, her dreams, her hobbies, her desires, so much so that her children began to take her for granted. She was always there, always serving. But then she took a class in pottery. She spent hours away from home, shaping clay, creating art, discovering joy outside the kitchen. Her family was shocked at first. "What about us?" they asked. But soon they realized this woman was not just a mother, but a human being with passions and purpose. They stopped expecting her to be their servant and started seeing her as a person of strength. She attracted respect, not pity, because she dared to reclaim her life. And then there's the student who always followed the crowd, dressing like others, thinking like others, hiding her true voice out of fear of judgment. She wrote poetry in secret but never shared it until one day, tired of living small, she posted her poems online. Alone, without a support group, without validation. And people noticed. Her words spread. Messages came in. "You inspire me." No one pitied her for being different anymore. They admired her for being bold, for standing alone in truth. Her courage in solitude made her unforgettable. Silence is not empty. It's not a void to be feared. Silence is a teacher, one of patience and unshakable power. In a world where people rush to respond, to react, to prove a point, the one who remains silent holds the deepest control. Think of the young woman who always fought back in arguments, who explained herself to the point of exhaustion every time someone misunderstood her. She was desperate to be seen, to be heard, to be right. But after years of emotional fatigue, she chose a new path: silence. When people provoked her, she smiled gently and said nothing. When critics spread rumors, she watched without defending herself. And what happened? Their noise tired itself out, the lies lost fuel, the critics grew uncomfortable because they could not control her energy anymore. People around her noticed something strange. Her calm shook the room more than any shouting ever could. Silence became her shield, her power. She no longer wasted words on the unworthy. A man in the corporate world discovered this lesson too. He used to jump at every opportunity to defend his work, to explain his value in meetings filled with competition. The louder he spoke, the more they ignored him. But one day, he chose to let silence speak for him. When someone questioned his ideas, he smiled and said nothing. When his rivals tried to belittle him, he stayed quiet and kept building results. And slowly the room changed. His silence made them uneasy. It forced them to wonder, to question their assumptions. When his project finally succeeded beyond all expectations, the applause was louder than words. He learned that patience in silence allows power to grow slowly, like fire under the ashes, waiting for its moment to rise. Even in friendship, silence reshapes your strength. There was a girl whose friends often took advantage of her kindness, expecting her to always agree, to always explain why she couldn't join, why she needed space. But one day she stopped explaining. She declined invitations with a simple no. No reasons, no apologies. And her friends noticed. The ones who truly cared stayed and respected her boundaries. The ones who used her drifted away. In silence, she cleaned her life of noise and pretenders. Patience revealed who was real, and power returned to her soul. In relationships, the power of silence is golden. There was a woman whose partner played mind games, ignoring her texts to make her chase, picking fights to make her beg for peace. For years, she fell into the trap, answering every silent treatment with desperate calls. But one day, she changed. When he went silent, she matched him. No calls, no messages, no drama. And suddenly, he panicked. His control broke. Because when you refuse to break the silence first, the game loses its power. Patience became her revenge. Her calm destroyed his chaos. And she learned that silence is the loudest answer to disrespect. Even in personal growth, silence teaches patience and strength. There was a man who wanted success fast. He tried every shortcut, every trick, hoping for overnight victory. But failure humbled him. Exhausted, he withdrew from the world, spent quiet months reading, learning, planning. In that silent season, clarity came. He saw the mistakes he made, the wisdom he missed. Slowly, patiently, he built his business the right way. And when his success arrived, it was strong and unshakable. Not like the castles of noise built in haste. Silence gave him patience. Patience gave him power. A mother raising her children also discovered this truth. Instead of screaming warnings when they misbehaved, she started waiting silently, watching, letting them think and feel the consequences of their choices. Her patience made them curious, made them reflect, and they changed. Not out of fear, but out of understanding. Silence taught her children what words could not. Even in moments of despair, silence becomes strength. A woman sat alone after losing everything. Her job, her relationship, her confidence. She wanted to cry out, to complain to the world, but she chose silence. In that quiet, broken space, patience grew. Day by day, without noise, she healed. She read books, she learned new skills. And when the time came, she returned stronger, calmer, wiser. The world met a woman transformed, not by noise, but by the quiet patience of her silent fight. And so, if life has taught us anything, it is this. The most powerful soul in the room is not the one who speaks the loudest. It is the one who sits in silence, smiles gently, and lets the world wonder what they're thinking. The person who needs no crowd, no applause, no instant validation, that person is unstoppable. Because the greatest battles you will ever fight are not in boardrooms or on busy streets. They are in the silent spaces of your mind. When you master your solitude, you master everything. Remember, greatness is always born in silence. Diamonds are formed under the crushing pressure of the earth, hidden from every eye. Oceans gather their endless force in quiet depths before they send waves to break the shores. And the greatest minds in history, Einstein, Newton, Curie, Da Vinci, they all found their brilliance not in the crowd's noise, but in solitude. You think Priyanka Chopra became Priyanka Chopra because she clung to approval? No. She dared to stand alone when the world doubted her. She dared to dream in silence when no one was watching. She dared to believe that even without applause, she was enough. And so are you. Silence is not your weakness. It is your throne. Patience is not your punishment. It is your weapon. The world will push you to speak when you should wait, to explain when you should watch, to beg when you should stand tall. Don't fall for it. A queen does not explain her worth. A king does not justify his crown. And a warrior does not tell the enemy when they are ready to strike. They wait. They watch. And when the moment is perfect, they move with the force of destiny. There is a sacred power in choosing not to settle. Not for half loves, not for empty friendships, not for jobs that steal your soul. When you choose to stand alone until something worthy comes, you send a message to the universe. I will not shrink to fit small places. I will not dim to make others comfortable. I will not break myself into pieces so that others can feel whole. And the universe responds by bringing you people, opportunities, and miracles that match your fire. You have waited long enough for permission to be great. You have waited long enough to find your permission to be great. But you must first find the fusion that provides you. You have explained yourself enough times. You have tolerated smallness enough years. Today is the day you stop. Today is the day you wear your silence like a crown. Today is the day you become the storm that no one saw coming. So let them wonder why you don't chase anymore. Let them whisper about why you choose solitude over noise. Let them guess why you don't beg for attention or fight for crumbs. They cannot understand what you are building in silence. They cannot see the fire you are feeding in the dark. But soon, they will. Because the woman who walks alone walks fastest. The man who stands alone stands tallest. And the soul that grows in silence becomes unbreakable. Life bends for those who refuse to bow. Destiny waits for those who are patient. And greatness comes to those who dare to sit with themselves when the world demands distraction. Remember this. The tree that stands alone on the hill feels every storm, but it also touches the sky. The eagle that flies alone fears no wind because it soars where no flock dares to rise. And you, yes you, are made for more than the ordinary. You are shaped by fire, by solitude, by silence. And that makes you dangerous to every limitation you've ever known. Stop explaining your worth. Stop begging to be seen. Stop apologizing for your greatness. The moment you choose silence over noise, patience over panic, vision over fear, you unlock the rarest power of all, the power of becoming untouchable. Because one day, the world will look at you and say, how did they do it? When did they rise? Where did this force of nature come from? And you will smile, because you will know the truth. The quiet ones change the world.